Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into this video. I'm Balazs Vajna and I'm going to talk about the BigQuery data transfer and some native export mechanisms that allow loading data from various platforms into our favorite database, BigQuery. Before cutting to the chase, let me give a little more introduction here. Our company, Marketing Lens, focuses on managing Google Ads and Meta campaigns, backed by our leadership's many years' worth of experience in Google, as well as analytics insights and data solutions that we derive from the marketing data lakes and the warehouses we build. As for me, I've spent well over 15 years in data and analytics, 6 of which focusing on web and digital marketing data, and of course BigQuery, CDPs, and related technologies. What is BigQuery? I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, then you already know what it is, but let's cover it very briefly just in case. BigQuery is Google's cloud database service. It's a platform to store and process data tables, which processing primarily happens via SQL or SQL. It's accessible via browser, which makes it really easy to work with. And it's serverless, which means that the infrastructure is fully managed and you don't have to worry about setting up environments. It has a very simple and fair pricing structure, and it's generally an all-around excellent database, and it's definitely the best choice for marketing data. First, let's start with the Google Analytics 4 export. This is the one most people are familiar with, and there are other great talks available on MeasureSummit. So I'm going to touch on it only very briefly here. So the Google Analytics data export, or in other words, BigQuery link, provides raw event-level data with a wide selection of attributes, for example, device, location, platform, traffic source, e-commerce, and so on. And all the collected event, user, and item parameters. There are loads of attributes in this BigQuery export. It's very, very useful data. And there's so many ways you can use it. Again, a couple of them are covered here on MeasureSummit, and there's a lot of information online. But I just wanted to include a few ways you can get started if you're not familiar with it yet. For example, ga4bigquery.com, which is a newsletter and a blog with detailed solution. There are also a couple of people who have produced SQL queries for GA4 data in BigQuery that can be obtained and used by others. There are also large language models that have been trained to provide queries if you ask a question in English language. And there are also online aids to do that in the form of websites or Chrome extensions. And there's also, I think, 2 very important bits. One is the ga4dataform.com, which is not live yet, but it's undergoing beta testing at the moment. And it provides a very easy to install process that unpacks GA4 data into usable format. It's definitely worth signing up for the release. And also the Simmer training, which is, I think, the best training out there to learn SQL on Google Analytics data. Now, demo time, just in case you're getting bored of slides. Let's look at what data transfer service looks like in practice. So I've already created a BigQuery project here. And on the left-hand side in this menu, the second item is data transfers. If you go in here, we can just create a transfer using this button, or if you have already set up data transfers previously, then you can click this button on the top as well. And let's try this on the example of Google Ads, because we're going to look at Google Ads in a bit more detail later. So let's select the data source, Google Ads here. Let's give a name of the configuration. Specify, and it's worth giving a name that you know that explicitly describes what this is going to be about. So the data source, BigQuery data transfer, and the name of the number of the account. Let's make it daily. Should run in the morning, perhaps. And give a destination, which it's good if it has the same name. There's a convenient option here to create a new data set. We can just put that name in here. Don't forget to select the appropriate region, especially if in the EU and you don't want the data to go to outside EU. And then I think that's pretty much it. And we can create the data set here. Customer ID is the number of the Google Ads account. And there's an option here to select the tables that you want. Now, when you first look at Google Ads data, there is no good way to know what tables exist in this data set. So best to leave it empty and let it get all the tables, because they might come useful in the future. We should definitely include all the tables, including the so-called new tables here. Definitely include performance max. And we don't have to touch anything else in here, really. Just worth clicking on email notifications, just in case something goes wrong. It's good to get an email. And then we click Save. Now our transfer is ready. And it is supposed to be running. I think if I refresh the page. Oh yeah, sorry, because I set it for 5 o'clock in the morning. But if I want to get data in, then we can set a backfill. So let's set a starting date, maybe just 2 weeks for now. I have this data elsewhere, so I don't need to load too much in here. Let's schedule the backfill and start date and end date. The end date is not going to be loaded, so make sure that you pick a date after the last day of data that you want to receive. And then if we click OK, it says backfill is scheduled. If I refresh the page now, then here it is. It is going to start loading in a second. There it is. It's loading already. Let's look at Google Ads, the platform where the most money is spent on digital advertising. I don't think I need to introduce Google Ads much. Okay, let's look at what we have here. I'll open this project. Google Ads. There it is. Whole lot of views in here. Yeah, and I even have to click show more to see all of them. Now come to tables. Yeah, quite a lot. So as you can see, there are loads of tables in Google Ads. There are actually 109 of them, and there's the same number of views. And just on that, so the tables and the views are pretty much the same. If in doubt, then use the views. That's a little bit better option, although it actually doesn't make a difference. There are a couple of thousand columns and more than 400 unique columns. So it's really easy to lose one's way in the Google Ads data, and it can be overwhelming at first. So with regards to the structure, it's not really a schema here. There's a separate table for most reporting needs and most dimension and metric combinations that one would ever need. They're all aggregated tables with one exception. We'll talk about that. And if you want to get started, maybe the easiest way is just to go back to the basics and identify a few tables that have the core information that most people would use in Google Ads. So there are 6 tables that you might only ever use in Google Ads. And they are the basic stats tables on one hand, and on the other hand, they are the reference tables or some of the corresponding reference tables. If you're particularly looking for something, then you can also use the information schema to find what you're looking for, to list out the tables and columns and look for the particular attribute that you're looking for. So what can we do with the basic stats tables? They're, as the name implies, they're good for basic performance reporting. Of course, in themselves, they don't provide much more information than what's available from the platforms themselves. If you go into Google Ads, you can see pretty much the same thing quite easily. But it's already very useful if you have multiple Google Ads accounts. So in Google Ads, you can't do that reporting in one place. You would need to collect that data from various places. Now, in those cases, the BigQuery data transfer can already be useful and bring value. And there's also any use case where you need to load campaign data into another system or integrate it with other data. For example, usually with GA4, if you want to calculate cost per lead or cost per acquisition, you want to create funnel analysis and you want to break them down by traffic sources and the costs associated, then it's very useful. But also, if you just want to do cost reporting or basic performance reporting across advertising platforms so that you don't have to go into every single tool and pull the report from there, then you can just append this basic stats table to the corresponding table from or aggregated table from other platforms. My other favorite table is the click stats table, which contains GCL IDs. What is the GCL ID? It's an advertising click identifier. It identifies a particular ad click, and you can often see it appearing in the URL when you click on an ad. Sometimes there's also UTM parameters, sometimes there's only the GCL ID. But Google Ads uses it to map information back to the originating advertisement. And the good thing is that you can do the same thing using this table. So the click stats table is a table with every single GCL ID with some descriptive attributes about the parent ad group, campaign, and some corresponding information that can be useful when you want to look up where that click came from. Also the dates and all these things. So how can we use it? We can use it to link GA4 data to get campaign details. If the UTM parameters or traffic attribution fields are unreliable, there are a couple of cases where it's worth putting in logic using GCL IDs to enrich or make the data more accurate. And it's also very useful in linking to customer data for offline conversions or anyhow mapping sales to advertisements. This is actually one of the most valuable use cases, but I'm not covering it here. That's a topic for a different presentation. One more thing to note, that this table can be large. This is the only really large table in the transfer, although even together with this table, the overall size of Google Ads transfer is relatively small, so you don't really have to worry about costs, even though there are more than 100 tables, but it's really not big. So there are some other cool things that you can do here. For example, there's the search query stats table, and there's a search query conversion stats table as well. These contain each and every search term and basic performance metrics against them, like impressions, clicks, and cost, and whatnot, again, for every single search term. You can also compare this against organic search term performance, either by joining it to Search Console data yourself. That's what we do actually. But there's also a table that already does this off the shelf, which is called paid organic stats. And there are some other ones. For example, if you're an e-commerce company and you want to match GA4 data and Google Ads data for comprehensive product level performance and see how well the ads are doing, or whether you're burning money on something that you shouldn't, then you can use either a shopping product stats table, which is exclusive to Google Shopping, or you can also use the landing page stat table if every single product is on a different URL. Then this can give a broader view on advertising performance than just shopping alone. There's also a geographic table which contains conversion data by region based on the actual location of customers, which is quite useful. Whenever you see a conversion stats table, that means that one of the dimensions or segments are denoting the conversion action, so what sort of conversion it actually is. It's quite useful. Just to note that this table, and it applies to some other tables as well, needs another reference table to decode some of the information, but you can usually get those extra tables from the support page, or it's available somewhere online. And then there's a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to go into in interest of time. For example, there are a couple of different so-called cross-device statistics tables. They contain impression shares and budget lost and some competitive metrics. There are also PMAX tables dedicated for PMAX and it allows looking into the black box a little bit. And there are also audience stats tables which break these metrics down by the different audiences that you're either targeting or you're tracking for observation. Here is an example of what you can do with some of these tables. So this is a breakdown of cost per purchase by country. And this can be used to determine countries that should be excluded from campaigns if they're doing badly with a high cost per purchase, which is much or more than the value of the actual product that you're selling, or customer lifetime value. Or you can identify countries that are doing so well that maybe it's worth creating its own dedicated campaign. This is particularly useful for SaaS products and applications and services that scale globally. Google Merchant Center is a platform where e-commerce sellers upload their product data, where this data then powers different advertising campaigns that promote these products. This data and the tool itself is most useful in the e-commerce space. Now let's see what the BigQuery transfer for Merchant Center can do for us. First of all, it's quite easy to set up. You pretty much the only thing you need is the access and the number of the account. Although one needs to be careful because it produces some large tables. The bestsellers product tables are some. So when you set it up, make sure you set it up on physical storage billing. There is a new version of this transfer. There was an old version, which was equally useful, a bit less detailed in one way, maybe in another way a bit more detailed, but it will go away in 2025. I think they extended it. It used to be I think it used to be autumn 2024, but now they seem to have extended it. And you can join this data to Google Ads and or Google Analytics if you want to do comprehensive product level performance analysis. So a couple of tables in here. There are these bestsellers tables. They correspond to the bestsellers report in Merchant Center, and they contain popularity rank and relative demand of different brands and different products. You can identify products that you're not selling, but you should, or you're selling, but their demand is decreasing over time, or maybe you should stock up because the demand is increasing over time, and things like that. And there's also a similar one for pricing benchmarks. So you can see how your prices are compared to others generally. I mean, you can't look at exact other competitors, but you can see the averages and where your own price fares in the competition in general. Of course, for a particular product, you can tell yourself probably, but with this table, you can do it across tens of thousands of products quite easily. There are also product performance tables and product tables. I mean, one of the simplest ways to use this table is to just monitor the number of disapproved products. This chart shows a relatively stable situation, but it was this exact chart for one of our clients where we suddenly saw a very high number of disapproved products once, and it's a lot better to see it immediately on a dashboard than realizing only a few days or weeks later that something is not right. Here is an example made for one of our clients where we brought together merchant center data with also Google Ads and of course Google Analytics data into the same dashboard, although I think this dashboard mostly contains merchant center data, so you can see there's already a lot of useful information here, and you can filter on products, for example, which you're selling for consistently selling for a higher price than the competition or the benchmark price. Doubleclick Campaign Manager is a way to manage and track ad inventory performance for paid media and display ads across different ad networks. It's typically used by larger brands, which want to show ads on a much wider array of placements than just Google's own display network. So the BigQuery data transfer for Doubleclick Campaign Manager is a little bit trickier. You will need agency and I think particularly Google support to set it up, because they have to first set up an export to Google Cloud Storage. And when they do that and you establish the transfer, which in itself is not that difficult a process, but even then it's relatively hard to analyze. So the data you're getting is a proper normalized star schema with 3 fact tables and 23 reference tables, which are called match tables. And just like Google Ads, there's also an equivalent number of views here. Now, this is different from Google Ads in the sense that this is transactional data. Every impression, every click, and every activity is in a separate row. Activities are basically conversions as recorded in using floodlight tags. The match tables, they are like regular reference tables. They hold category names because the categories are encoded with numbers in the fact tables for, I think, storage optimization. When sometimes they contain further details on these categories, or they can contain hierarchy levels. So this transactional data could actually be very, very useful. Now, to see every single impression and click would be heaven for attribution. Unfortunately, there is a column user ID which is unfortunately not too well populated, primarily I think due to privacy reasons. And therefore, most of the fun things that one could imagine up, or the best use cases, they're not really possible to do by via the DCM export. So what you can use it for is to aggregate performance data for paid media. So you would end up using it in an aggregated manner. But you can break it down by site, like which publisher sites your ads are appearing on, which placement types, and like all the other ones, you can integrate this data with other data sources, for example, for cross-platform reporting, if you want to report on Google Ads, Facebook, Doubleclick, etc., in the same place. Now, because we would aggregate the data anyway, you can also consider using the native export from Campaign Manager itself. There is a report builder tool in DCM, and it allows for Google Marketing Platform 360 customers, it allows exporting those results, the report results, into BigQuery. Now that is also tricky a little bit because it creates a separate table every day. So you need to create a pipeline which handles that. But all in all, it's easier to analyze, and you don't have to go through those aggregation difficulties. You just configure your report as you need it. You can check out the results before you export them into BigQuery. So it's quite handy. And also, if you're looking at DV360 and Search Ads 360, DV is 360 is display and video. There are data transfers for them separately as well, but I'm not going to cover it here. I'm sure Google Play does not need much introduction either. Google Play data only comes into the picture if you're dealing with mobile applications. The Google Play data transfer is one of the few transfers that are not free. It costs $25 per month on a prorated basis. They've changed this a little bit. Earlier, it used to be charged on a daily basis with $2.5 per day. It's relatively similar, but it looks like overall it has become cheaper. And also a good thing is that now it has a backfill option with unlimited historical reloads. So you can probably play with it to download it only on during certain periods if you need it, if you're really cost conscious. But it's also it's also handy enough if you just keep loading it every day in a normal manner. So there are a couple of tables in here. These tables are also generally available on Google Play UI reports. So there's not much extra benefit to these, to be honest, in that sense. And there's also not many ways to link to other data sources. It's more like a standalone, at least as far as I've been able to determine, or I may be wrong. I'm very happy to stand corrected if someone has a good use case for it. Now, the stored performance traffic source table, in particular, that can be linked to Google Ads campaigns if the setup is right. So the tables there are some financial tables like earnings and sales. Reviews is probably one of the most useful tables, because then you can analyze the sentiment, you see the ratings, and you see every single review. And now, especially with the LLMs around, large language models, you can translate them, you can classify this text, and you can do a lot of things with it to just analyze maybe how the sentiments shift over time, for example. But generally speaking, apart from the reviews table, the largest use of this is probably to automate reporting. Although even for that, typically apps are available not only Google Play, but on the App Store as well. And then you would need the App Store data as well to provide comprehensive reports. The BigQuery data transfer doesn't offer that, but Fivetran does, for example. So you can use, this is one of the examples where you would need to use third-party tools to get what you need. Now, Facebook ads. I'm sure most viewers are no strangers to Meta advertising, the second largest platform of advertising spend. There are a couple of new data transfers in preview mode. Facebook ads is one of them. There's one now for ServiceNow and Salesforce as well. I haven't had the chance to try those. The Facebook ads one has been available since around February 2024, I think. But it has undergone a couple of changes, and I think it's been relatively stable, as in it hasn't really changed much since the middle of June. It had a relatively unsuccessful initial release, but there was a lot of data that it wanted to provide, which is very promising. It just, I think, didn't work for a lot of people, so they took it all away, and they started to re-release in small bits and pieces. So currently, it provides 3 tables, and initially, it only contained 1 day's worth of data at the time, always the previous day, and it was overwritten every single day. It wasn't particularly useful that way unless you created a small data pipeline to just save off those tables somewhere else. And that's what we did, for example, to share the tables. But from the 13th of June, it's been collecting historical data now. So it's I think it's quite useful now. I mean, it's not a very complicated piece of transfer. It has a few steps to set up, also in Facebook, but it's doable. It's stable enough, and it does the job really. That's its main benefit, that you don't have to go too far, you don't have to look at third-party tools. You might just get away with the BigQuery data transfer. The Add Insights table contains really, I think, most of the important metrics that you would want to report on, like reach, clicks, impressions, post engagements, and these sort of things. Also, there's another table which breaks things down by conversion type, similarly to how Google Ads does it. Now, backfill is also available. It's only 1 day at a time, but it's definitely better than nothing. So now if you miss a day, we can backfill it. And because there are a couple of placeholders, some columns that are not yet populated, but they're there, the hope is there that it's going to be further improved. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the first version also included more tables, so there's probably more to come. So obviously we're looking into the future with optimism. The drawbacks are that it's still, well, I said stable, I meant it mostly for the data structure. The data transfer itself occasionally breaks for no good reason. Sometimes it gives a reason, but it was relatively random, and sometimes it really just gives an unspecified error, and it keeps erroring out until you retry it manually, and then it keeps working, and things like that. I think the bigger problem is that currently there's no way to filter on accounts from a business portfolio. So once you add your Facebook details, it's going to load everything from there, including your personal account. Now, there's not a lot in your personal account. That's not the main problem. But if you're an agency and you're using your own account for this, then there's no way to prevent BigQuery from loading all the data that's associated there, which can cause problems or is a little bit tricky. I could almost say with a little exaggeration that I left the best for last. Google Search Console data is very rich in insights, and Google created a very neat way of exporting all that data. Let's see how you can set it up and what you can do with it. So you can set this up in Google Search Console itself. If you go to the settings page and there's a bulk data export option in there. Now, in this case, I've already set it up, so it's active. If it's not active, this is where you can click and you can set it up. It gives you a few things to do. Very important to note that it only starts collecting data once you set up the bulk export. It's like Google Analytics 4 in this sense. There's no backfill option available. There is an alternative to use the Google Search Console API. It provides similar data, but it's less complete and in some ways less detailed, although it allows retrieving historical data for 16 months, 15 or 16 or something like that. So it can come handy if you really need data now, you're only starting now. And also one more thing is that if you use the API, you have to come up with the right schema to get all the information out of it that you should. But pro tip, 5 strands data structure is very good, so you can look at that. But it's not as good as the bulk export. So again, best to set it up ASAP, really. So it creates 2 tables plus a third one, which monitors the exports and tells you if a load wasn't successful and things like that. But the 2 main tables, they both provide organic search performance data, impressions, clicks, and position information. It's the sum of positions, and you can use that to calculate the average position. And it breaks these down by search type, country, and device. I mean, both of these tables break this down by those dimensions. And according to Google, this is a close representation of the data to what they have in the backend. I think by closer, we mean closer to the API or Search Console itself. It definitely provides more data than these because it gives records for anonymized queries. So we are not getting different numbers from different tables, but if you aggregate these tables by any of the, or aggregate any of these metrics by the dimensions, you will get back the true numbers or the true totals, really. So the search data site impression is the smaller table. It provides data broken down by query, as in the search tabs. So you can see how many impressions and clicks you had and what top position you achieved for particular search tabs. In this case, impression is counted once per search result. So you can see how many searches you've come up as a result with some sort of positions. So if you calculate click-through rate, for example, then this is the better table to use. Some queries are anonymized, so you don't see those search terms themselves, but you get the numbers for them in a separate row where the search query itself is not shown, but all those queries, the volume of all those queries are included for that array of dimensions where the query is not shown because of anonymization. The other table, search data URL impression, it is broken down by, again, query, but also by landing URL. And this is very useful. There's a whole world of patterns that are hidden in there. In this case, impression is counted once for each instance of appearance in the search results. So if you come up 7 times in the list, and the number of impressions you'll get for a particular query is 7 if you add it up through the landing URLs. Again, the number of anonymized queries are provided, which is good. And this table is also bigger because, not just because of the extra breakdown, but also because it has a lot of extra convenient columns, usually binary flags to denote certain types of search, which is either useful or not, but definitely it's better to have them there just in case. So as I think I mentioned it probably these exact words, that there's a whole world squeezed into them, really, in terms of insights. It's some people have called it an SEO goldmine. I don't work in search engine optimization myself, so I can't tell, but we have provided useful analysis for SEO experts before. So I'm inclined to believe that it is true. So one thing that you can definitely do just simply by having this data in BigQuery is categorizing landing page URLs, for example, different product sets, different website sections for publishers, and things like that. So the ability to create bins and buckets and segments is there, and you wouldn't be able to do this through Search Console. You can definitely do it also using the API, though. So this is just generally power of BigQuery. You can categorize search terms similarly. So if you want to bucket them, one of the most straightforward and most useful examples of this is to separate branded and non-branded queries, and then you can just separate all analysis based on this and maybe use it as a filter. And a version of this, categorizing search terms, is also possible if you use advanced text analytics functions, for example, to account for typos, to reduce the number of long tail queries, especially on brand search terms, because it can be a manual work. So you probably can't do it for everything, but you can definitely identify all the search terms that are meant to be branded, maybe just they mistyped it or something like that. Then you can, creating a similar chart to this, for example, where you just plot different pages and put information, or you segment them or visualize them based on how many impressions they're getting, what positions they're getting, and the color here also shows the click-through rate. You can identify pages. Sometimes there should be no index, that they shouldn't even appear in large websites, that they shouldn't be out there, Google shouldn't see it. You can identify cases for cannibalization, where multiple landing pages are going for the same search term, and it's not good because they will both get a worse rating than if you have one page with optimized content that is targeting that keyword. You can do long tail keyword analysis in some situations where there's a long list of keywords with small volumes that are actually driving a lot of traffic to your website, all in all. And you can, generally speaking, join to GA4 data to see how the organic search traffic drives engagement, and you can see it further whether, after a good average position and good click-through rate, if it actually fulfills the promise on the website itself, whether the customers actually find what they are looking for. You can only see it from GA4 data. Finally, let's look at some more ways to import data into BigQuery. And then let's wrap things up. So if the above are not enough, then there are third-party API connectors that one could use. I've already mentioned a few examples previously where this can come handy. There are many different tools, right? And apologies for anyone whose tool is not represented here. There are dozens of them, really, but these are probably the biggest and most known ones. Fivetran has been around for a few years. It's definitely one of the leaders. It has an excellent data structure. Their documentation is very, very good. And it's available through the BigQuery data transfer service itself as well. There's an option to look around for third-party powered connectors, although in some cases it might be better to set things up using Fivetran's own user interface. And it has a free tier below 500,000 rows per month, which is worth looking at for certain data sources. Then there is Supermetrics, which has account-based pricing and not row-based pricing, which makes it more transparent and makes it easier to plan and budget for things. And Supermetrics is also available through BigQuery data transfer. Maybe not all of their connectors, but a good couple of them. There's Airbyte, which I'll be honest, I haven't used at all, but it has a lot of connectors. It's a lot of it is open source as well, and it is free if you use the self-hosted version. So with some data engineering veins or skill sets, it might be a good thing to try. And there's also, I hear a lot about Portable, which has a very, very large pool of connectors, but it's not available outside the United States, so I haven't used it. Now, there's another one which I mentioned before, the ability to load Google Sheets data into BigQuery. In fact, it's not even loading it. You can define external tables that are straight off directly look at Google Sheets files, which is really, really good, really handy. And it basically means that if you can get a tool to export data into Google Sheets, then you can basically bring it into BigQuery for free or whatever price it takes to export it to Sheets, but there's no extra price for bringing that data into BigQuery. Really, really useful. Let's just summarize what we've heard in this last while. So BigQuery makes it really easy to ingest digital marketing data without having an army of data engineers. There are also countless ways to join data between different data sources. For example, Google Analytics versus Google Ads, a few ways. Other advertising platforms can also join to Google Analytics for Google Analytics 4 with Search Console can be joined. Google Ads can be joined with first Search Console. And you can append consistent or coherent metrics from different advertising sources. You can stack them into the same table and report on them that way. Also, when you have multiple accounts, for example, in Google Ads or multiple properties in Google Analytics, you can bring that all together quite easily. So much so that even if you don't use BigQuery in your analytics stack per se, even then it can be used as an excellent staging area. So instead of using other means to extract data from the platforms, you fire up a BigQuery environment, you load the data there, and you just load that data further, either you process it in BigQuery a little bit or you don't process it at all. It's your choice, but you can load it further to other platforms like Snowflake, AWS, Azure, Databricks, Cloudera, or even to on-premise databases if you want. Now, in some cases, for example, if you use Google Analytics 4, you need the data, it's probably best to pre-process it a little bit in BigQuery, but I've seen many different sort of implementations that work. Most transfers produce data that is cheap to store and query. So we talked about a lot of things here, but most of them are almost free. Except Google Analytics 4, if you have many years worth of data and you're a large website or merchant center, as I mentioned, you have to be careful with that one. Yeah. Now, BigQuery, apart from all these, is just a great database engine overall. It has many convenience and many advanced functions that you can see, that you can use. And it's integrated with a lot of also advanced services. There's a whole lot that you can do using Cloud Run functions or BigQuery machine learning or Gemini or some other mechanisms. It's really integrated. It can do a lot, but that would be a topic of a different talk, really. And BigQuery also offers ways for data activation and loading data into platforms like Google Ads, which is also a very interesting topic, but that too is a topic for another time. So that will be it for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and many thanks to Mercer and Julian for giving me the opportunity to talk on MeasureSummit. Please reach out if you need help with data science. Connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn, and definitely check out our virtual booth. Bye-bye.